Hey, how's it going guys? Ancient Rune here with a Once Human build video, and today I'll be going over my best critical pulse build. This build is focused all around maximizing power surge damage. I love the critical surge because it just feels so good with single target and mobbing, making it great as a do-it-all gun, as well as giving me a sniper feel, as I love sniper builds. What I do not focus on, but will mention a bit, is low HP methods, which is especially good if you have lunar mods, but I do not have that, and I like being at higher HP, so my damage is slightly lower than you may see in other people's builds. What I will mention is some Starfall inversion tech on this build, but is never needed to do some amazing damage. I also want you to keep in mind that the damage I'm showing is not peak for my build, and I'm still farming for even better rolls for everything, but the base build itself works amazing, so you can hit even better results than me. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Once Human content. Alright, so first off we have our gun, the Critical Pulse. This is a power surge weapon focused on status effects, and it is a crossbow. When shooting, it triggers continuous power surge on hit with a 70% chance to generate deviated particles near the player, and you can pick them up to enter a charged state. Continuous power surge can trigger every 0.5 seconds within 3 seconds on the current target. Higher stacks shorten the interval to a minimum of 0.26 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. While in a charged state, hitting a target consumes 1 charge to create an orb of lightning, dealing shock elemental status damage of 75% PSI intensity to targets within 5 meters every 0.5 seconds. This damage benefits from power surge bonuses and has a 5% chance to generate deviated particles lasting for 3 seconds, and you get a shock elemental damage bonus of 30%. This means that power surge will be acting as a status effect, and so we'll be focusing on status effects, elemental damage, and PSI intensity, since we have PSI intensity at the bottom. Now for the calibration, you are going to want to go portable style. You do not ever want to use precision style, as this will increase the reload speed of your gun, which is a lot less DPS when we only have 1 mag, so we are always reloading, and more reload speed means less shooting, which means less damage, especially when we want to constantly be building up stacks of power surge. Also, portable style is just nice because it gives some swap speed and movement speed, which is just really helpful as you can better dodge attacks. And then you just want to make sure that you have elemental damage on here, as this is the only thing that can help, as power surge and the PSI intensity explosions will not be benefiting from any critting or weak spotting. And then for the accessories, we have the scope. This is the only part, and it doesn't really matter. You can just go whichever one you want. Reflex scope could be pretty nice, as it gives some stability over range, but range is also really nice, but I guess this one's really just the best option, since it gives the maximum aiming speed, range, and zoom level, especially if you want to get some sort of sniper type feel. And then for the ammo, you will want to use blasting AP arrows. This will give increased PSI intensity when triggering shock, which is that power surge, or 3 seconds, which is just really nice. And for the secondary, we are going to use either the bingo or the wildfire. Now, I like to use the bingo as it is consistent for bullseyeing, and as our secondary, we are using this for boosting our main damage. So after switching to this weapon, the first hit will trigger bullseye, and since you're just switching to this weapon quickly to apply bullseye, you should always get that guaranteed bullseye, and then you can swap back. There's also the 70% chance of triggering bullseye on a weak spot hit, which doesn't really matter much, as we're just doing that swap to and swap away. And with that calibration, you could throw on a portable style if you were just focused on this. Well, I like to sometimes use this for damage, so I'm still trying to figure out what calibration to put on this, but getting portable style for that swap speed would be really nice there. But I'll still quickly go over the wildfire. This has a 60% chance to trigger bullseye when hitting a target, not weak spot specific or anything, so this is still consistent. But since you're just swapping to and then swapping away from your bullseyeing weapon, I go the bingo as that is the most consistent. You also only really need this for like bossing and mini bossing for this extra damage. And then for the melee weapon, we are going to use the kukri. Now this is only dropped from monoliths, silos, and other activities that can give weapons, as this cannot be crafted, which is really unfortunate. But however, this is really good for the effect, and you definitely want this, as this effect has, when defeating an enemy with a heavy strike, PSI intensity increased by 20%, and PSI intensity will be increasing our damage. And we can get that easily activated without actually killing an enemy with the ice pot, which drops from Way of Winter, and it will give us sticky ice crystals, and this will count as an enemy for us, as you can just throw one out, and then we can use melee heavy attack without actually holding the weapon, and that will count as killing an enemy with our heavy strike, and so we will get that increased PSI intensity. As you will also notice is that when we are not actually holding it and we do this heavy strike, it's not using up durability from what I've noticed. So that's also very helpful. Even though it's dropped gear, you don't have to worry about it really breaking. This is also another thing I find only needed like bossing and mini bosses, and normally just everything else is just kind of just shooting this. All right, and since we're already on one deviation, we'll go over our main one we will have equipped, which is the Mini Feaster. This will summon tentacles, which will then increase your status effect damage. Since we don't have anything that boosts shock damage or power surge damage, we use this. And so we just have this following us around. This is something you can have during mobbing, but it's another thing I really only find for bosses and mini bosses. But it could also just depend on how much damage you need and how good your gear is at this time. So we have this, and right now mine is at a maximum of 70%, but I believe at skill rating 5, it can be up to 80%. So that's just some really easy status effect damage right there. All right, and then for our gear, we have our key gear, which is going to be the Mayfly goggles. This increases the trigger count of power surge by 1, so we have higher stacks, which is really nice. It does decrease the damage, but since we're having more stacks, we have more DPS going there. There is also the options of the pants called the overloaded pants, which can be really good, and this is good for good peak damage, as this is really good for high burst damage. After triggering power surge 20 times, the next 6 shots will consume reserve some ammo instead, and shock damage plus 20%. Now, what makes it so good is this means that you are not reloading, you are consistently shooting, so you don't have to worry about that in between reload, but it does mean you have less power surge stacks. But the damage is pretty similar, and also with overloaded pants, if you swap away from your weapon, then it will reset these stacks, which is not very good when you want to have your stacks ready maybe for like a boss, and you go to like apply a bullseye with your bingo, and then you lose all those stacks, so you got to do it during bossing. So I just don't even mess with overloaded pants. You can use it, it's just harder, but not impossible to use. And then for the gear sets, you are going to be looking for 2-piece Blackstone or 2-piece Shelterer for that elemental damage. Here we have up to 10%, and then with Shelterer we have a consistent 8%, so there's that. I'm also in a Way of Winter right now, so I like having the cold and heat resist, but it doesn't really matter too much. While this is peak, it's also takes up time to get that damage, so it can be whatever you want. You could try going 3-piece Blackstone, but I haven't messed with the temperature stuff to really confidently have that warm status going. And then you're going to want to have the 2-piece Saviors. Now, I really like this Savior because it gives medicine cooldown haste as well as increased status effect damage. It also does give weapon damage, but it doesn't really matter in here since status effects and everything with like PSI doesn't get weapon damage. So when above 70%, you have that. And then the medicine's just really nice. And then I like to have a 1-piece Renegade to get some reload speed. Since we're constantly reloading, that reload speed is really nice. Now, it doesn't matter exactly where you get it, but you do want to make sure you're upgrading specifically the highest PSI intensity gear. So you have like the Blackstone mask and the Mayfly goggles giving high PSI intensity. Then you have the Blackstone pants, or just pants in general, then gloves, then the top, and then the shoes. Then what you can also do for low HP is going 3-piece Treacherous instead of 2 Savior, 1 Renegade, or go 2 Treacherous, 1 Renegade for some reload speed. But having that 3-piece is just a lot of damage and may work out being better damage than having some reload speed. I haven't really min-maxed that as I don't really care for the low HP. But you'll see here it gives when below 70% HP, it will give 12% status damage. And then also give up to 28% status damage depending on your sanity. And when your sanity is decreased by 40%, you'll just get that consistent 10% status effect damage. So this can give up to 50% status damage from here from 3 pieces. And you're losing 38% if you did go that 1 Renegade, which I don't think is really worth it, but there is also a lot of other ways to get status effect damage. Meanwhile, I'm getting only that 10% instead of 12% with Savior with some reload speed, but I have fuller HP so I can get hit more, and I just prefer that, though I haven't really given low HP a chance yet. So if that ever happens, I'll probably make a new build on all that. And then for the mask, there's a couple different things you could go. I'm just going to go down the list and say what's good. You've got the rabbit fur for elemental damage here, here, and here. You've got status damage with different wools. You've got shock damage with the snowfield bear skin. You've got elemental damage while crouched with the cave bear skin. You've got status damage from the velvet. This is status damage while dampened. You've got the elemental damage for the lunar rabbit fur and doubles when below 30% HP, so that's even more damage getting boosted. You've got status damage at low HP with the lunar wool. You've got the Dream Zone elemental damage and Dream Zone status damage. You've got the Starfall Down status damage. I think this is what I used. And that is it for the different hides. They've all got their different situations, and you can min-max all with that. All right, and then our mods we're going to go over next, but first I'll go over the substats and what to prioritize. So for your weapon and your mask, you're going to be looking for the power surge damage prefix. This is going to be able to give us power surge damage and then damage increase to targets with power surge. There's some other passives you can get instead of that second power surge damage, but this is the one you're going to want to aim for. There's also shock damage, but that's just elemental damage, and instead you want this multiplier here with the increased damage. And then you can go either damage to elite or damage to great ones, depending on the content. Maybe even damage to normal ones could be okay, but it just depends on the content. I usually do a lot of silos, so I'm not really fighting a lot of great ones, but if I wanted to, I do have great one bonus here. And then for other stuff, you're going to be looking at talents or Downstar or Lunar. Downstar and Lunar are for the pants and boots, and that will be based on the low health or the while airborne. But first we'll go over the talents as this is consistent, and if you're not doing any of that weird stuff, then this is consistent stuff. And talents will give us elemental damage and status damage. That is what you want to prioritize. And then again, you have the elite damage and great ones damage. You can also find reload speed instead of status damage, which is pretty nice. And if you do get a lot of status damage, I am curious to where if reload speed could be better because of diminishing value, and then reloading faster is better DPS. And then here I've got Downstar, where you're just looking for elemental and status damage still. It's just different kind of passives. Now this is at normal level, lower damage than having just talents. But if you take advantage of the airborne and being at a higher level, it does have a higher peak. A legendary level elemental damage is here at 8%. where we have Legendary Elemental with Downstar at 6%, but can go up to 11%. So you've got that 3% difference. And with these two different ones here, that can be up to a 6% damage increase since you got that 3% difference on both. And that will be the same thing going with the status damage, with it being a little different. And if you really want to take advantage of the height difference when you're not just in this Starfall inversion event in the overworld and want to do it in different content, then you can use the gravity neutralizer, and this you can get as a formula and then craft these. You just activate it and then you can hold jump in the air like this. And now we're just chilling up here, or you can just ADS. I'm not holding the jump button anymore and I'm just ADSing, and that'll work. I'll just do it again like this. And now I just ADS and we're staying up here. It does use stamina, but not too much to where it's noticeable. All right, and then for the mod for our weapon, we are using Static Shock. This will gain increased power surge damage, but less duration. That's fine because we're shooting a bunch and getting those stacks really easily. So we don't have to worry too much, and then we just get more power surge damage. And then for our secondary, we want the vulnerability amplifier as a bullseye gains increased vulnerability. So this is just more damage, and this will work even when we're swapping back to our other weapon, which is very important as not everything will get boosted with that. Then I don't have anything on my melee weapon because I haven't found much reason to. If there's anything that I can throw in here that could work well, let me know. I mean, I'm not swapping to this. I'm only ever like forcing melee with melee button. Then for the goggles, we have work of proficiency. This gives us increased reload speed and elemental damage when reloading with an empty magazine. Since we only have one mag in our magazine, we are always reloading on an empty mag, so always getting that reload speed and then that elemental damage there. And it resets with the next reload. So that's constant reload speed and elemental damage right there. Then we are using Thunderclap. After triggering Power Surge 20 times, the next hit summons Celestial Thunder, which shock damage of 200% PSI intensity. So PSI intensity is even important there. There are other mods you can go, but they're just not really worth it. Like for enemies without Power Surge status, Power Surge ultimate damage plus 30%, not really worth it. So we just stick with Thunderclap, and that damage from Thunderclap is definitely noticeable when it procs. And then for here with the top, there's not really many options here. I like to go Rejuvenating since it helps with healing since I'm going full HP. Now, of course, if you're going low HP, this is useless and you can just use something else. You could use Critical Rescue as damage reduction and healing received when HP is below 30%. Now you'd only be worrying about this damage reduction and not the healing received, but still nice. But there's a lot of different things here you could go, but since I'm not really focusing on that, I don't really worry about it. Quick comeback could be nice for healing shot and a free reload when that's happening if you're mid-reload when you're healing. And also give some movement speed, which is nice for movement, or this damage reduction after a healing shot. There's a couple different options you could go there. For the pants, we're going abnormal increase. When the magazine is empty, increase status effect damage up to 3 stacks. And so this is really easy, just easy 30% status damage here as you're constantly emptying that magazine over and over and over, always having those 3 stacks. Then for the gloves, you are looking at 2 different options, either status enhancement or elemental overload. Whatever bonus you need more is the one you should go. I have not min-maxed which bonus I need more, but I made a really nice status enhancement for another build, and so I'm using it just consistently right now, but I may eventually make a good elemental overload one that I can swap between when needed. And then for the boots, I go covered advanced. Taking no damage within 4 seconds grants increased weapon, status, and melee damage for 30 seconds. The effect resets when the duration ends. This is really easy, especially when out of combat. You just get that proc and then go in combat, then it ends. 4 seconds later it goes up. Even if you take damage while this is active, it does not go away. So this is just super, super easy to keep up. All right, now we'll go over the Cradle. First, we have the anti-phase, which this gives increased damage when using crossbows. Then we have aerial suppression, which while airborne, damage received from monsters is reduced by 30%. So just easy damage reduction, especially if we're in the air like that, we're not really moving. Then this just makes it really nice. As if we do get hit, because we're stationary, then it's a lot less dangerous. And then we also go rapid aid, as this helps with healing cooldown. And then we go status enhancement, which status damage is increased for 3 seconds after hitting a weak spot. So you still want to hit weak spots from time to time for this bonus, but you are not benefiting from weak spot damage here. Then we have Deviant Energy Defense, which summons a shield of max HP of 30%. And while the shield is active, we get some damage reduction, and the cooldown is 30 seconds. So this is just really nice added tank, especially so we're not always getting directly hit at our health, so we can easily keep over 70% for that savior set bonus. Then we have Tactical Leap. For every second airborne, you will gain increased damage against deviants and damage against their shields for 3 seconds. And this goes up to 30 seconds. So at 1 second, you'll have 3 seconds of this bonus, and it'll go up to 60 seconds. Then we have Elemental Sense. After dealing elemental damage, corresponding elemental damage is increased. So this is just easy damage going with increased shock damage. And then we have Transient Impact. Dealing power surge damage grants power surge damage. And so this goes up to 10 stacks. So this is an easy 25% power surge damage. Right now we have food buffs. This has really been maxing it, but for that higher tier content, you will want it. First off, you're going to be looking for the mixed fried hot dog. You use this, gain increased damage by 20% towards enemies affected by bullseye. When you're bossing, you're always applying bullseye, so you're always going to have this bonus going, which is really, really nice. There's also other food options like Layered Galaxy, while airborne, grant elemental damage bonus while airborne, but I think this might be additive with elemental damage, and while the other one is just a pure molt, so that'll probably be better. But if you don't have any of that and you do have Layered Galaxy, it's not bad to have at all and will help. And then you have Bone-In Deviated Sausage, which increases damage against bosses by 15%. This is already a category here. Let me find it to bosses. So this is, I'm assuming, the great ones. And since I'm not always doing great ones, like really ever, I don't really worry about that at all. But then for the drinks, you have the Whimsical drink, which gives status effect damage, which is really nice. But then you also have the Sparkling Pumpkin Soup, which increases power surge damage by 10%. All right, and then we have the playstyle here. This is really how you're going to do like fast boss melts and maximizing that damage. It's not as much needed for mobbing itself. It's mainly just kind of shoot gun forward. But first I've got my buff up. You'll see at the bottom that is with the hot dog. I don't have a whimsical drink on me to use. And then I'm going to make sure I have Touch of the Abyss active. And you want to make sure you have everything ready to go with all your buffs. And then I will throw it on this ice cube, break it, shoot for debuff, and then start going at it. And my damage will slowly ramp up. And then I've got the airborne going. I don't know if all my buffs are active right now, but still 62,000 casually is very good. And we can definitely push this further with better stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed the build video. If you have any questions or any suggestions for improvements, make sure to comment them down below so I can improve my build. I also want to give a shout out to Mon, who I based my build off of, so I will link his channel down below where he does some really high damage min-maxing stuff. Make sure to go subscribe to them and watch their amazing content. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Once Human content, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.